So my camera cut out and I wasn't quite finished with chapter 2, but I actually thought that it was a really good place to stop and kind of understand what's going on here. So we meet Raskolnikov in the first chapter, and he's done this dry run, and he's feeling super agitated, realizing that not quite understanding if he's going to go through with it, realizing that maybe he hasn't thought everything through. And he goes into this tavern and he gets something to eat and drink, and he's kind of feeling like, oh, maybe that was all just fantasy, and he's feeling a little bit better after eating and drinking. And while he's in this tavern, there's not very many people in there. Everybody who's in there is drunk. He sees a man who is obviously trying to catch his attention, clearly wants to have a conversation with him. And it's Semyon Marmeladov. And Marmeladov is a down on his luck, ex-city worker. They recognize in each other the social class. So Raskolnikov recognizes that Marmeladov is a city worker. Marmeladov recognizes that Raskolnikov is a student. And this makes Marmeladov really want to talk to Raskolnikov because he's like, oh, all these other characters in here, they're kind of beneath me, but you're a man who, will understand. You're of a rank that will understand. And so he's like, hey, good sir, can I, have a conversation with you? And Raskolnikov is just like not used to talking to people. He has not talked to anybody in a month. And so he just kind of sits mute while Marmeladov goes off on this story of his life, essentially, where he discusses how he was working in a faraway region, a remote region. He meets his now wife, Katerina Ivanova, and she was a widow. She had come, he goes on and on about how she's very educated, how she was the daughter of, a very respected man, and she married for love. Her family kind of disowned her a little bit after that, and her husband that she married was a gambler, and he ended up dying. And so when Marmeladov meets her, she's got 3 little kids. She's destitute. She's desperate. And he says, I couldn't leave her that way. So he was also a widower. He had a daughter, and he offers his hand in marriage to her as a way for her to get out of her desperate straits. And she doesn't really love him, it doesn't sound like, but she has no other choice. And so she marries him. And he says that for a good year and a half, he did good by her. He did right by her, but then he lost his job. And when he lost his job, he took to drinking, which has been a vice of his, and it got really out of control. And so he's now an absolute drunk at this point, and he talks about how the children are crying because they're starving. They're living in this terrible tenant situation where the landlord actually beat his wife. And, she took to her bed not because of the beating, but because she was so insulted. She just feels, Katerina Ivanova is a very proud lady. She's, as we'll find out, she's very proud of what she came from. She's very proud that she was educated. That's not the norm for women at this time. She's proud of who her father was, proud that, that at one point in her life, she was a debutante and she danced, at the debutante's ball. And she has she used to have a medal that has since been pawned, but she still has this certificate that, shows, excuse me, that she was, that she was a lady of status. And she even shows it to her landlord at one point to just prove, like, I'm a, excuse me, I'm a lady of nobility. Don't look at where I am now in my life, but who I was. That's very much what she feels. She feels she is who she was, and that she doesn't like being judged by her current circumstances or her husband or her, the way she takes so much pride in them. He says she's like scrubbing and cleaning the children. She's almost obsessive. She's almost like a little OCD, we'll find out, with the cleaning and the, keeping the kids. I mean, they're in rags, absolute rags, but she's like, they're going to be the cleanest, best rags. And he talks about a point where he's drunk. The landlord's beaten her, I'm assuming because they have not paid the rent. And she spouts off at his daughter, Sonya. So the daughter from the other marriage, which is her stepdaughter, saying, "You sit here and you do nothing. And, here my kids are crying and you eat their food and they don't get anything." And Sonya's like, that's not true. That you don't really think that, do you? And Katerina's just the type of person that's going to, when she's upset, she's going to take it out on everybody else around her, including her own kids. He says that when they cry from hunger, that she just immediately starts beating them because she can't stand that they're crying, and that's the only way that she knows how to deal with her frustrations, is she just takes it out and lashes at everybody else. He also talks about how they had to sell everything, including he was selling everything for drink. He's like, he was selling off all of her things for drink, and he sold this special cape that she had. And then it's very cold where they're living, because it's not a good apartment. And she's gotten very sick. So she has what's called consumption. It's basically like where you cough up blood, and it's a lung disease. And so has this disease where it's like the more worked up she gets, the more she starts coughing. She's coughing up blood, her cheeks are red. This stresses Marmeladov out. He's kind of like giving himself a pass a little bit. Like, he's like, "Oh, I drink so that I can really feel the weight of what I've done to her." It's like, that's not why he's, drinking. He's drinking because he's selfish. He talks about all this stuff is happening, and he's just laying there drunk, not doing anything. And so he talks about this time when Katerina lashes out at Sonya and says, "You sit here, you do nothing. You eat the food, but you do nothing. And my kids are starving." And Sonya, 14 years old, leaves the house, comes back 3 hours later and puts 30 rubles on the table, goes and lays in her bed and starts crying. And Marmeladov references the yellow ticket. She has a yellow ticket. So what a yellow ticket was at that time period was, it was the way that prostitutes were licensed. And it was basically like that the government saying, like, "We recognize you're a prostitute." And it was almost like a health card. And this is what Sonya's done. She understands. He's talking about, like, he's kind of like trying to make an excuse for her, saying there is no way for a decent woman she's not she isn't educated. I tried to get her a book on geography, but she's not educated. She doesn't really have any skills. She tried to do seamstress, but that didn't work out great. And so the only way that she could make a living, come back in 3 hours with 30 rubles, was to prostitute herself, which is what many young women ended up having to do to survive. And so Sonya makes this huge sacrifice. That's not who she is as a person. It isn't what she wanted to do. She wasn't raised in that way. But she realizes that this is the one thing she can do, and it will help her family survive. It'll help these kids eat a meal and get by. Meanwhile, all this is happening while Marmeladov is in the apartment laying there drunk, so drunk that he can't even comment on it. He can't do anything. And she realizes this is her father. He's not going to do anything. She's been with him her whole life. So who knows him better than her? And she decides that this is the only way. This is the only way to help these kids survive. And she comes home and she lays in her bed and she cries, because this isn't what she wanted for her life. But once she's a prostitute, that's it. Like, she's going to get this yellow ticket. The landlord is like, I'm not going to have a prostitute under my roof. And Sonya has to leave. She has to go and rent a room in another part of town, have the yellow ticket and the stigma attached to her that she is a prostitute. And she is so ashamed. And she says, "Well, I'll come see you when it's dark outside. I can't come." Like, she doesn't want to here she's made this sacrifice for her family, but she doesn't want to shame them into being associated with her. So she says, "I'll come to you at night when it's dark and visit then and bring you money." And she just takes up this life of prostitution in order to help them survive because her father is not doing it. So when Sonya makes this sacrifice, when she comes back with the 30 rubles, Marmeladov does get himself together enough to say, it's gotten too far. He goes and he cleans himself up a little bit, and he goes to his former boss at the city office, and he kind of begs for his job back. And the guy's like, you kind of let me down last time. You weren't the greatest, but I'm going to go out on a limb for you. I'm going to get you your job back, but you have to tell me you're not going to be drinking anymore. Like, no more of this drinking. And Marmeladov is like, okay, and he did it, and he comes home and he's so proud. And he is like, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps. I got a job. And we're going to see in the second half of this chapter where Katerina is so proud that he has done this, willing to overlook that he's the one who got him into this place in the first place. But she's, bragging to the landlady about how he's going to have salary again. And Katerina, you'll see, also has a tendency to, it's like she lives in a fantasy world. Like, she creates a story and a narrative that makes things seem better than they were. Marmeladov talks about how, she married this other husband for love, and he was a card player, and he beat her. Like, in the end of her marriage, he was beating her, but she talks about him as if he were this great love of her life. And Marmeladov says, I'm glad that in her own mind, she feels like she has happy memories, because she just kind of makes stuff up. And she kind of makes stuff up too about her husband, and like makes it sound like it's better than it is. She always wants everything to be better than it is. So she talks about it. She kind of creates like this fantasy life. She sees it through rosy glasses. So when things are bad, she's almost like she sees them worse than they are. And then when things are good, she makes them better than they are. And she's very like high strung and temperamental. And so he comes back and he tells her that he's got a job, that he has his job back, and she's just beside herself with pride. And so we're going to pick back up. I'm going to finish chapter 2, and then we'll finish the discussion on how chapter 2 ends. So I will see you at the end of chapter 2.